Our song of invitation this evening will be number 255, I Am Resolved. That's the song we'll sing at the close of the lesson. What a great night it's been so far. We had a good lesson in our college class tonight, and I hope you've all had the same. No matter whether you were in a class listening to someone or whether you were teaching children or adults of what age, I hope you've been blessed in your class tonight. Our college group's been having a thing each month. It's called Dinner and Discussion, and our college kids get a lot of opportunities to get together and have devos and sit in classes, and so we decided to just have a time where they could just have a discussion and talk about maybe their opinion or things that are going on in their lives at college or work. They just wanted to talk about, and we had our first one last month, and they gave some suggestions on topics, things they wanted to talk about, maybe learn more about. Some of them are things from the Bible, stories they hadn't heard, maybe from the Old Testament they wanted to discuss and look at. But the topic that we decided to talk about first, for our first actual month of meeting, was self-control. And so we did that this past Monday night. And we had some good discussion there. And from that discussion, I did some more study and took some notes from things that they shared with us at that time. And self-control can be applied to so many ways in our lives, whether it's things we think or say, our actions, how we spend our money, how we react to things. So there's a lot of ways to go with this, and it's really kind of been applied to me lately as well. Life, the fall time we're talking about the fall is just as busy as summertime now. There's so many things going on every weekend, and it's great. It's a blessing. There's exciting things, time to fellowship and interact. But with things going on, and comes stress of trying to do all those things, or kids involved in different places and beat all those things. And so when the topic was suggested, I couldn't agree. It was great, something we need to talk about. And so I've got some thoughts on that, and some of these things we talked about last night that I'll share with you, and some things in the Bible to look at. But one of the verses that we looked at first last night was Proverbs chapter 25. And this was kind of where we kicked off from. It was a verse I brought up, and then kind of went from there with some other things on this verse. And I'll just go ahead and read Proverbs 25, verse 28. Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls. Our first thought is those walls keep the bad out, and that's true. But just as importantly, they keep the good in. And that can be applied to us directly in whether it's ourselves personally, or our families, or homes, the groups we're involved in. And I think of that city and the good that it can do, and the damage and the bad that it can do as well, and can be done. Turn over with me to Matthew chapter 5 and verse 14. Jesus is talking here to the disciples, and he's reminding them how they're viewed. He reminds them that you're the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. How important is that? Is we are a city on a hill, just as the disciples were. We're cities on a hill. We're looked at and viewed. We're seen every day, and we're seen whether we're doing good things or bad things. We're viewed and seen. And how we're seen by others relates to our self-control and how we react to situations that we're in. Monday evening, one of our college students brought up an excellent point and mentioned that our lack of self-control is a direct representation and reflection of the church as a whole. And that was so true, and such a good point that we may be the only interaction or the only representation of the church that some people get. They may interact with us and find out that we're a member of the church at some point or another, and we have we may not realize it in that moment, but we've made a reflection on them and an impression. And so we have to make sure we're making right choices, and whether they're interacting with us at Walmart at 10 o'clock at night and we're in a hurry to get out of there, or we're late for work and we're screaming at the lady in front of us or the guy in front of us to move out of the way on the road, they're seeing that, and they're seeing that. And we may have a bumper sticker in our car, and you never know. You never know where they're going to tie you back to and see that. So we never know what they may observe that's happening. Much like a city on a hill, we don't choose who we shine upon or who observes what we're doing. Turn with me to Galatians chapter 5. Galatians 5 and verse 19. Now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lewdness, idolatries, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousy, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, dissensions, heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I also told you in times past, those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. He's right talking about temptations. You know, we're tempted in these, maybe not each and every one of these ways, but we're all tempted in one or more of these ways. And as we're tempted with those things, we have to make a decision on how we're going to deal with those temptations and those situations we're in. You know, are we going to be stressed out, and are we going to just explode and have an outburst of wrath at somebody? You know, envy, are we going to envious or have selfish ambitions, jealousies? You know, we have to have the control, self-control to react properly in those situations and not end up in these works of the flesh that Paul is warning us about here. We have to, we need those walls around us, right, to keep the good in and to keep the good thoughts and the pure thoughts and the right ways in. But right after these temptations, in verse 22, we see the fruits of the Spirit here, and that's love and joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such there is no law. It's the opposite of these things. He gives us righteous and godly behavior to live by, and listed here is self-control. So how do we improve on our self-control? It's important here, and we're not perfect at it. Every day is a different day for all of us. We're at work some days, we're on vacation some days, we're being parents at home some days with kids. I was talking to Taylor about the lesson, and we were kind of reflecting on Monday night, and she said that she was reading a book today at work, and it had a good quote that she shared with me there, and it says, the chapter was referencing self-awareness and self-control, and it had this quote about it. It said, the more you exercise them, the stronger you get. The more you have self-control, whether it's in a stressful situation or a calm situation or an easy situation or a hard situation, wherever you're at, the more you practice self-control in any situation, the easier it is and the stronger you get. And I thought that was so applicable. It wasn't anything scriptural based, but it was just there. It's a good quote on that. I was looking online at some examples and definitions of self-control, and dictionary.com mentioned this as a definition of self-control: the ability to control oneself, in particular one's emotions and desires or expressions of them, and one's behavior, especially in difficult situations. I can say easily and unfortunately say that it's a pretty accurate description of self-control. And recently, like I mentioned, at fall time, things are busy, and that's true at work for me right now, and maybe some of you are experiencing the same thing, but or just in your daily lives, but it's stressful. And there's difficult situations that you come up on, and you're stressed, and you don't have time, unfortunately, to think about self-control. And so sometimes you don't have the right self-control, and it's hard to have that, and you have to stop and remind yourself to always practice self-control in each situation, whether it's an easy time or a hard time, where there's a lot going on or a little going on. It's so important to practice that at all times. Before we finish up tonight, there was a couple examples in the Bible that I wanted to point out and look at. And some of these are great examples of self-control, and some of these are poor examples. First poor example I thought of was David and Bathsheba. David was a strong man. He was a powerful king, and did a lot of good things. Still referenced as a man after God's own heart in Acts 13. But with Bathsheba and Uriah and the war that was going on at the time, David made a bad choice there. He was in a situation, and his self-control hadn't been where it should have been. He made mistakes. Look also at Moses striking the rock. The people were grumbling and complaining, and I'm sure it was stressful. You've got a whole nation looking and leaning on you. And Moses lost his self-control there and struck the rock. And, the direct consequence of that was he lost his access to the promised land in that. The last poor example I thought of was Samson, right? Samson, he was tried, and he was strong for several times. And he finally gave in and lost his self-control there, which lost him his strength. He gave in to a wicked woman and had poor self-control and lost his strength from that. There are also some great examples in the Bible of self-control, and the immediate first one I thought of was Job, and what self-control he had, and what a tough situation he was in with losing everything he owned and his family, and then ultimately his wife and friends going against him. And, it'd be easy to lash out at them and get mad at them for doing that to him, and he didn't. He retained his self-control even towards those who were closest to him, and that unfortunately can be so hard sometimes if the people, your family, your parents, or your spouse, to not lash out at them. You're with them each and every day, and you get frustrated, and it's so easy, not easy, but it's harder sometimes not to get mad at them and lose your self-control. Obviously, the perfect example of self-control is Jesus. And one situation I thought of that in was Matthew chapter 4. When Satan was tempting Jesus, and he refused all those temptations, and he didn't get mad, did not lose his temper at that, and didn't lose his self-control. Also in John 8, you see Jesus talking to the scribes and Pharisees there, and they were wanting to accuse this woman of acts of adultery there. And Jesus walked up and very calmly told them, you who has not sinned can throw the first stone. And they left. He was so calm in that. How easy is it sometimes when we defend someone to come in and we're screaming and kicking and yelling and stuff, and people lose respect for us, and we've lost our self-control, and we've made a bad impression, and they're not going to listen to us anymore. But Jesus here was calm and collective about the way he handled the situation. So, where's our self-control at? Obviously, we're not going to be perfect like Jesus. We strive for that. And an example of situations he goes through to have self-control. But I want each of us to take a moment and be honest with ourselves and think where our self-control has been. Maybe you're at a point in your life and you have great self-control. You've been practicing self-control for more years than myself, older than I am, and maybe you're good at that, and if so, that's great. But no doubt there's some in here, maybe they've made poor decisions, they have poor self-control, whether it's things at work that have gone on or with their family, or just things that we're going through in our heads, thoughts we've had, situations where we're tempted, maybe alone, where you think no one's around. So I'm sure there's something I hear in both situations. If there's anything we can do to pray with you, maybe you need forgiveness of things you've done in certain situations, come forward, we can pray with you. And maybe you need to put on Christ in baptism tonight. If you haven't done that, come now and we can help you with that as we stand and sing.